Welcome back to the Invest in Yourself podcast. Today I'm joined by former drug dealer Joshua Holi. Joshua talks about his life on the street as a drug dealer and how he was almost killed and robbed over drugs. Then of course he talks about a life-changing event for him after he had shot his sister's boyfriend. He ended up going on the run for months from the police. Joshua was of course caught after a while and went to prison. Please subscribe to my channel for more interviews like this. And to make this very clear, Joshua has really changed his life around 100%. He's got a great redemption story. Now without further ado, let's get into Joshua's story. Good morning, Joshua. How you feeling this morning?
I'm feeling great, man. Good morning.
Well, thank you for coming on my show, man. You got a really good redemption story, so you really fit with what I'm doing with this show. And I'm just, I'm really glad to see that you changed your life around and you're now speaking and sharing your life story.
Yeah, I appreciate you having me, and I'm happy to be here.
Yeah, well, I think the best way to get into this interview is with starting with your early life. What was it like for you growing up?
Growing up for me, it was a pretty normal childhood. I grew up in a single parent home with just my mom, and I had an older sister and my grandmother. But yeah, we lived in a small town called Bethlehem, Pennsylvania, and it was just a normal childhood. I was a nerd. I was very studious, into things like skateboarding and stuff like that. So nothing too out of the ordinary there, but not having a father, I always wondered where he was.
I would imagine that to have some kind of impact on you. Just always having that, wondering why, where's my father? Like what's the issue? Why doesn't he want to be around? And I mean, if you feel comfortable, I mean, what happened with him? Did he just run off and disappear or?
No, it was my parents were married for X amount of years and they divorced right after I was born. So he ended up living in San Diego, California, and my mom went back to Pennsylvania.
Oh, completely.
And so we were on like completely different sides of the country. Yeah.
Jeez, man. Yeah, so that would have a definitely big impact on your life and growing up, just not having that father figure. I mean, what do you think that did that affect on you? Like, what was that like? Because I mean, you would go on to shortly get involved with crime and stuff, but I mean, if you had a father figure, I mean, when do you think you would have been more on the straight and narrow with things?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm definitely a believer that it's important for a child to have a father in the home. And I did have one other friend who didn't have his dad, and we used to have conversations even at a young age. You know, why aren't these guys around? Why wouldn't they want to be involved with us in any way? And I think in retrospect, it often left me out in the street, looking for like father style figures. When I would see what the older guys were doing, I kind of clung to them and respected them. Or if I was over at a friend's house who had their dad, I would be like hanging out with them all the time and try to like bond. I kind of felt connected more and kind of looking for that missing piece.
Yeah, I mean, for a young kid, I mean, even for adults that go up and go in and live their life. I mean, it's always kind of like trying to find that, even if it's not even intentionally, man. It's just like something that your heart and your mind kind of goes for, looking for that, like some kind of mentor or something. So I get it, man. That could be definitely rough growing up. And when was your first involvement with crime? Because like you said, it was pretty normal for a while. Just not involved.
Yeah, I mean, I wasn't even a troublemaker of any sorts, even into my early teens. But once I hit 16, I was with my same childhood group of friends. But, as you get older, you start to get into doing dumb stuff. And, the first time I got involved with crime was we were 16 and we had a rival high school and they had like a greenhouse on their school property. And we were passing it one night. It was impulsive and we, broke some of the windows in there. That ended up being caught on camera. So we got caught and we got this fine. It was like a $700 fine or something. And I needed to figure out how I was going to pay that. And I'd already knew people in the neighborhood who were selling drugs and things like that. And that thought came to me like, man, these guys have money. They have, resources. And I end up going to them and asking them, look, is there a way I can make money with you guys? Because I don't know how I'm going to pay this fine. And I owe the county some money. And that was kind of like my first encounter with getting some weed and starting to hustle for what would turn into a long time.
And at that time, you think either getting a job would have been in your cards or just selling the weed? What drew you to sell weed versus getting a job?
I think for me, it was the first time I had ever owed anybody money to an extent.
Hmm.
So when I when I thought about a job, I'm like, okay, this is going to take a long time, and I just wanted this out of the way. I knew I wasn't going to be getting paid much, and I knew these guys were making a ton of money quickly. So I kind of just thought it would be an opportunity. Look, I could do this once and be done with it. And yeah, it just ended up not working out like that.
No, I mean, because you ended up getting, after you made how quick did it take you to make your $700 back? And you were selling
I,
weed, right?
yeah, I made it in the first week. They gave me an ounce. I bagged it out in grams, and I bought a scale, and got the lowdown on how that stuff works. And I hollowed out a book that I used to take to school and just have a rubber band around it. And yeah, it went off about the first 7 days.
Jeez, I'm sure that stunk really bad taking it in there to
Yeah.
school. Jeez, man. Yeah, that'd be really sketchy taking that in there, man. The teachers would be all over that. They know something's going on. But I mean, you went and you sold it. Then after that, did you pause? You paid off your fine, or did you just go full force with it more?
Yeah, that's I paid the fine right off, and I mean, I was making smaller payments in the beginning because my I didn't want my mom to realize that I'd paid the whole thing, but I had the money to pay everything off, and I just kind of let it go. I thought, this wouldn't be a big deal. I'm done. But then people kept coming and asking me, and then I thought maybe I could do this one more time to get some clothes because we weren't a family that had money by any means. And then I thought, oh, maybe I could do it just to get a couple other things. And then it just turned into, all right, I've come to the realization that this could be something I just do for full time, and I kind of accepted and dove right in on it.
So when you were 16, did you think you were gonna make a full career out of it, like your whole life? Maybe you were thinking.
I think I was just being an ignorant young kid and thinking, I hear about people getting in and getting out of the business, but at the end of the day, there's always going to be somebody doing this. Why can't that be me if I play the cards right and do things smart?
Yeah. Well, when you started making lots and a lot more amounts of money, like you said, your parent or your mother, you were living with her and your sister. Did they start seeing that you had more clothes and money coming in, or you were helping them out with bills or anything like that?
In the beginning, I just made enough that I wasn't buying too many things, and I was just putting the money away. And it got to a point where, my by then I was a little bit more of a punk, I would say. So it was like with my mom, we didn't have a great relationship. And then it got to a point where I wanted to get out of there that same year, actually. So I had like 8 grand at the time in the shoebox. And I remember just taking the money and just saying, like, I'm getting out of here. And I walked out of there, and I never went back. I ended up moving into a place where there was like some higher drug activity in the neighborhood. I knew I could make more money down there. So I was staying with some friends, and I ended up staying there until I graduated high school and was just pursuing it full time then. So I kind of like disconnected from my family at that point and just went full on with the people that I was running with.
Or you ended up graduating then, right?
Yeah, finished high school. Nobody knew anything at the time. And then it was kind of post high school where I started, seeing more money. And that's when, my family started finding out and things like that. Cause by then I was buying cars and jewelry and stuff like that.
So when they started to find out, what was their thoughts on what you were doing?
Yeah, they were pissed. They were definitely pissed, but I didn't spend much time with them to the point where they can, come and lecture me about it. Like I'd pop up here and there. I'd spend an hour with them or something and then get out of there. But I knew that they knew, and I knew they were really disappointed. But I thought at some point I would get out of it. After graduation, I actually reached out to my father, who I started talking to again just over the phone. And I have a brother out there as well. And they told me, look, if you want to get away from that, you can come to San Diego, test out, maybe just starting a new life in California. And so I tried that, but old habits, ended up selling drugs over there. And, I ended up coming back home, and that's what led into like my bigger crime.
Yeah. Well, before we get into the bigger crime, I mean, Were you when you got into the drug business and you were living on your own, were you selling more higher drugs or was it just the weed?
In the beginning, it was just marijuana. So when I was 16, 17, I was selling weed pretty consistently, got up to, I don't know, $30,000 or something like that. I would end up having, again, I was just putting that money away, not spending it. And I had no clue what I was going to do with it when I got it. And it was more so, buying local things, like I said, like jewelry and cars and taking some trips. But then, yeah, I did start selling crack for a while in the neighborhood that I was in. It was all, low level, out on the street style deals. I wasn't selling any like heavyweight there. And then I think a year or so I dealt with cocaine, and I was selling that uh, more so in like not too heavy of weight, couple ounces, 100 grams. I'd be selling to people and things like that, and then some small time transactions as well. But then primarily I went back to weed because the bigger drugs is just a bigger problem, and it's so much more heat and so many more eyes on you that I thought weed is something I could still make good money on and just stay low key with.
Yeah, and I mean it does bring more attention with that because you don't, when you're dealing with dealing cocaine or crack, whatever it may be, the customers are different because they're not just like some, potheads looking for some weed. It's like
Right. Yeah,
these
exactly.
guys are like itching and shit. They want their drugs, and if you ain't got it, they're gonna freak out, right? I mean, was there ever any sketchy deals while you were doing this? I mean, did everything go smooth? Did you ever get robbed or?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely had some rough situations. There was a time a guy tried to stab me for some crack. I definitely got into some just normal fist fights over coke. But when that stuff happens, it's like these people are really trying to take you out. I mean, even when I was young, actually, I got shot at over some transaction that went bad with one of the people that I was running with. I mean, I also had one of my really close friends who was selling drugs in the same neighborhood get killed by a crackhead in 2005. So we were definitely losing people, and I was aware of the severity of what I was involved in. So even though I wasn't getting out of the game, I thought if I scaled back to marijuana, it would be less of a chance that I would end up possibly being killed or being put in some really long jail sentence.
Yeah, so you really saw that the difference between just selling weed and selling cocaine because it brings, like I said, a whole different customer of people. So
Oh
you
yeah.
realized that, and well, how old were you when you got shot at then?
I was 16. Yeah, and it happened during the daytime. So one of the people that we were running with got robbed by this, crew of guys, like two or three people, and we end up crossing paths with this guy later, and we all end up jumping him. And so, although we didn't get any money back, we thought in turn we got some get back for it. And it was like I think a month or so later, I was in 7-Eleven convenience store that's in our neighborhood, and this guy was in there with one of his friends. So he recognized me, and then when I was leaving 7-Eleven, and he started yelling towards me, they jumped in the car, and as they were peeling off, they started firing at me, and I was just running up the alley, desperate, looking for a place to go. So I knew early like what kind of game I was involved in, but for some reason, again, being that young, ignorant mind, I thought instead of thinking I shouldn't be doing this, I thought I think I need to start carrying a gun.
Yeah, so just thinking of just more reasons to stay in the game, but protecting yourself. It was never the thought never occurred to, oh, maybe I should just be done with this life. You know what I mean?
Yeah, which makes no sense to me looking at that now, but that's
Oh,
that was the thought
that was,
process then for sure.
so, yeah. Well, I mean, what about gangs and stuff? Did you ever get involved with one, or did you
They
just
were
run?
around. Yeah, they were around me, but it was, I think that was one promise I made to myself that I didn't want to do, because that's where I kind of felt like there wasn't an escape from. So although I agreed in my mind to go ahead and sell drugs, in the back of my mind, I always thought it was something I could get out of when I had made the decision. But I was really mindful about the gangs, and I saw that activity around, and I thought, that's kind of like a life decision that you know, is really difficult to get away from. So I strayed away from that. I respected them, but yeah, the gangs weren't for me.
Yeah, so you were just more independent. Just, I mean, you did your own thing, and did you have your own crew of guys and stuff that you were around that were doing these operations with you, or that you
Yeah,
can
well,
talk about?
the cool thing about or the beneficial thing for me, what I was doing, I was dealing with a kind of like a intellectual guy that wasn't an aggressive or known person. So the person that I was getting the stuff from, nobody really knew about who this guy was because he was a really quiet, uh, older guy that, you know, was a business owner, and just a really like low key type person. I got connected with him through a friend, and I couldn't even believe this guy was selling drugs when I met him. So yeah, none of my friends really knew about him. I kind of kept him secret for the most part, and I had a couple of people that, you know, I would give work on consignment to, but it was never really a big crew because I was always paranoid. You know, the more people involved, the more chance things could go wrong, and I really just trusted myself and not so much anybody else.
Yeah, no, I mean, who else to trust in that life, man? You can't put trust in anyone like that because you never know what's going to happen. I mean, did you ever? What point? I suppose that you did you ever put trust in anyone and they in that life and they screwed you over? Or, I mean, did you ever get screwed over like on maybe with some friends or someone in that life?
I think the only times I've really been, I would say, screwed over is just, you know, sometimes you front people some things, they owe you some money and they have problems paying it back. You know, you try to do a favor for some people, and, you know, in most cases you just got to chalk it up and just cut those people off. So yeah, I've definitely lost several, but thank God it was nothing too severe where, you know, somebody beat me for, you know, thousands and thousands of dollars. You know, I kind of looked at it as, if that's all it cost me to find out you weren't real, then by all means, I don't have any problems paying
Yeah, and just be done with them like that. I think I seen that on a movie too. I think I heard that.
it.
Yeah. So I mean, from 16 years old to 22 years old, that's when you were very active on the street and stuff. And when you were 22, that event occurred. But I mean, at what point were you making the most amount of money at your age?
I would say 19, 20. I was making somewhere in the realm of like $50,000. I would have pretty consistently. And again, I didn't think about getting out then. So normally I would just get up to 50K and then start spending some money to enjoy myself, and then let the stash replenish back to 50 and kind of just continue that cycle.
Yeah. Well, what was your daily life at that point? What would it look like when you woke up in the morning, the afternoon? Or were you just partying all the time, or were you at that?
Yeah, yeah. I think once I hit 18, 19 is when I started getting active in the party life. You know, leading into that, I was not drinking, I wasn't smoking or anything. And I think that was another big downfall for me because it kind of, you know, clouded my judgment with certain sales, with certain, you know, doing certain things. I just kept getting closer and closer to getting in trouble. But my daily would just be, you know, I'd sleep in, get up first thing in the morning, start bagging up work, you know, making sales during the day. I try to stay low and just with a couple of people and kind of just plan my next, you know, series of trips. Like, what other places do I want to see? Where do I want to go? You know, is there a way I can expand my network? I was very much a loner in this game for a long time. And then I'd, you know, get caught up with some girls and stuff like that and go to some parties in the evening, stay out late. I wasn't a huge club guy, but I would definitely be that person who was out late, chilling with different people in a low key setting. But for the most part, I was trying not to be too loud.
You're trying to stay low key, like the guy that was supplying you or whatnot. The guy you said he was a business guy. You wouldn't even expect, man.
Yeah,
That's
college educated, business owner, you know, really clean cut. He almost looked like had that European style, and he was just this older white guy. And you know, I tried to learn from him in that aspect. Like, the quieter, the better.
yeah. Well, leading up to your let's talk about the when what happened when you were 22 years old. That big life changing event. What was the whole situation with that?
So yeah, my sister was with this guy for a long time since she was in high school. They were together, and They were like high school sweethearts. They had both graduated high school. I was a couple years behind them, and my sister ended up getting pregnant. This is around the time I moved to California. So she got pregnant. We were all excited. They were gonna have a baby. They had a baby boy, and the relationship ended up not working out. It started going downhill pretty quick, and I started to develop some strong anger for him. And so around the time that I moved back to Pennsylvania from California, my sister by then was a single mom, raising her son on her own. They were co-parenting, and yeah, I had a big problem with this guy, and I knew eventually he and I would meet, and it was going to be some sort of confrontation. So it was right after I turned 21. Actually, it was on Christmas Eve of 2006. I went to go visit my family for Christmas, and I came in the door and went upstairs. My sister was crying, and so I asked her, what's wrong, and she had told me that there was some drama situation with her and this guy again, and she was going to go talk to his new girlfriend, in an amicable conversation. I think it was to the extent about sharing some texts that they had or something, because this was like a different time. We weren't so active with the social media then. So I told her I'd go with her, and I hopped in the car. We drove over there. I stayed in the car. They were talking, and then out of nowhere, this happened on his street. So he ended up pulling up, and he wasn't supposed to be there. So he pulled up, and now he sees both my sister and his new girl talking to each other, and that ensued this huge argument. And so things started getting out of control. A lot of screaming and everything. It was late at night. I hopped out the car, and things just escalated and got out of control to the point where I ended up pulling my firearm and shooting him. And we escaped the scene at that moment, and I knew this was game changer for me, because now I had just shot someone. I didn't know if he was dead, and I knew life was about to change, or did change right then and there.
When that happened, like you said, you didn't know if he was dead or alive. How were you feeling about that? I mean, did you really want to do that? I mean, did you ever shoot anyone like that before? Or
I had been in some shootings prior. Thank God there's never been, I could only say so much about it, right? Because there's nothing ever came of it. But yeah, at the moment, it's, I've said this to people before. It's definitely not what most people think it's like who watch it from the outside looking in. It's a very disorienting experience, because at the moment when you're firing a gun, a lot of the time the shot can just totally blow your eardrum in a way. Like your ears are ringing. It's dark outside. People are screaming, so everything you're hearing is muffled. You're worried about other people who were there, because his cousin and another person had came outside. I couldn't tell who was all armed. So at that moment, I'm in fear for my life, my sister's life, and I'm just trying to protect. That's kind of the only thing on my mind at that moment, protect her, protect myself. So as soon as I started firing, I kind of pulled her into the car and was trying to address the situation. I saw everybody had kind of, dove to the ground. So at that point, I knew there was some sort of control. And then my next thought was, okay, I got to get out of here before the cops get here. And that's what ended up happening. We jumped in the car, sped off. I started taking the gun apart like immediately in the car. She was screaming because it happened so quick that she didn't even know what happened. So yeah, once we turned around the corner, I think we got about a mile away from the scene. I had hopped out and told her, look, you're never going to see me again. And she was hysterical. But I had to get her under control and just say, just go home, and I know you didn't see anything, so you could just tell them whatever you want. I didn't even tell her I was the one firing. I don't, there were shots going off, so I don't know what she knew at that moment. But I just gave her a hug and a kiss and told her, look, you're never going to see me again. And I took off.
So yeah, she didn't even want you to have anything to do with that or do that. So I mean, she was just really sad about that. And damn, man, that is insane that wouldn't. I mean, yeah, it's just insane that that happened, man, and, like, you just never know what it's gonna lead to, these, confrontations, you get family members involved, and people who have high emotions, man, they get mad, and
Oh yeah.
things like that happen sometimes, and in your case, that's exactly what happened, and you went on. What did you do after? Would you end up going on the run, right, for a little while?
Yeah, so I actually was on the street when the cops. So when I was on when I got out of the car, I took the gun apart, and I had the gun apart. I threw it into this like sewage drain. That was the reason why I jumped out of the car at the point where I did, because I saw it, and I already saw like police speeding down the the street to go address the crime scene, and I knew at that moment, look, there's no way these guys are going to know it's me. So I took out my phone. I stood right on the curb, like right on the sidewalk, put the phone up to my ear, and I start, smiling and acting like I was talking to someone, and they just started blazing right by me. And I took off down the street after the last car had passed. And I was on a street that I was familiar with, and I knew someone who lived on that street. And just so happened, because it's Christmas Eve, I saw their door open, like their front door open, the lights were on, there was a ton of people in there. They were having like a party. So I went over to the door, knocked, and they just let me in, like, "Hey, what's going on? Merry Christmas." And I acted like everything was okay. I was like, "Oh, I was in the area. I just, wanted to see you guys. How you guys doing?" And so,
Damn.
like, I told the one, it was a woman who lived there, and I knew her boyfriend. So as soon as I hugged him, I kind of just whispered in his ear, like, "Hey, can we talk in the other room?" And as soon as we went in the other room, I told him, "Look, I can't tell you anything, but I need some help. I need to use your phone." And he just looked at me and was just like, he could tell something was really bad, and he just gave me the phone. So I called a friend. He came and picked me up, and I ended up staying at his place for like the next month. It was a friend that no one knew that I was even close with, but I had already, had a conversation with him, and he was adamant, like, if you ever do anything or you ever need a place to stay, call me. And that was the day I had to cash that in.
Hmm. Yeah. So after I suppose because you said you were with that friend for about a month or so, what was going through your head for that month? Were you in contact with your family or the law enforcement? Were they trying to, get searching your family's house, your friend's house? They're looking for you. What was that like?
Yeah, they were actually, it was once I got to his place, I think it was a few hours later is when word kind of got back that he was still alive. He was hit 2 times, and for the most part, was okay. He got hit in the arm and the leg. And so I didn't know, who said anything to the police or anything, but yeah, they were looking for me immediately. But the next morning I saw my face was on the news. I was wanted for an attempted murder. And I knew at that point I just had to sit tight. Like, I couldn't leave or go anywhere. I couldn't risk that. It was like things were way too high at the moment. And I had reached out to a lawyer, and he had told me, "Look, with this charge, if you take it to trial and you get convicted, this is a 20 to 40-year sentence."
Hmm.
As soon as I heard him say that, I hung up the phone, and I just thought, I got to run. Like, I have to run, and I have to make enough money to somehow pay this guy to not go to court or something, so I can try and get out of the sentence. And that turned into me being on the run for the next 13 months.
So what were you doing? Did you end up getting some money? What were you trying to make money, or was it? I mean, could you even make money at all? I mean, being on the run, I mean, that had been difficult.
Yeah, in the beginning, I was just, burning through money because I had to let things kind of cool down. So the first month or so, I just stayed at my friend's house, didn't call anyone, had been got rid of the line that I had. And, you know, thank God for him. He just let me stay. And so I end up, linking back up with some other connections and just selling drugs again, but just in a heavier like weight. So I wouldn't have to be out there making, normal transactions. I had like 2 or 3 people that were under the wing for me, just doing the sales, and all I was doing was sending someone else to collect the money. And that's when I decided, okay, I got to get out of here now. So I had took the bus. I got some fake identities from this place in Philadelphia, and I started booking bus tickets to go across the country. I had some connections still in California that weren't my family, who had said, look, get over here. We'll take care of you. You know, you can hide with us. We'll find a way for you to work. And so, yeah, I took a 3-day bus trip then, you know, across, got into California, and then I was there for another couple months working just odd jobs, and it wasn't working out. So I started selling drugs again. Like, it was just like more trouble. So I went down to Texas. I had some friends in Texas as well. And I went down there for a couple months. And at that point I knew things were just falling apart. And I was like, I have to go home.
So you managed to make it to California and then Texas for a while. And while on the run, I mean, did you let your guard down more while you're at these different states, being, you know, versus Pennsylvania?
Yeah, Pennsylvania, I was just complete paranoia of getting caught. You know, I had a police scanner I would always have on me, just playing at all times, just in case I heard my name over some dispatch call. You know, obviously people were upset with me for what I did. So I was wearing a bulletproof vest because I expected, you know, retaliation, more drama. You know, these were grown men. So even if I felt like they weren't about it, or they were, you know, you got to take it serious when a grown man says something. So, you know, and I was angry still. At that point, I felt like my life was over. So for me, it was kind of like, let's continue to go to war then, because I feel like I don't have anything left at this point to do. And, you know, kind of buried myself in that mindset, unfortunately. But once I got out and got to California, there was an incident there where I went to my dad's place, and they actually came for me there. I was able to get away at that point, thank God. You know, jumping yards and all sorts of stuff. And I ended up running into this auto dealership. I was hiding in the bathroom for hours, like until my brother came and picked me up.
Huh. So
But
they got word that you were at your dad's house then, or?
yeah, somehow they found out that I was there. I'm not sure to this day how that happened, but yeah, they came into the driveway and everything, and I had already had things set up in the back for if I ever was in that. You know, like I had like a table with a step already there that I could just catch that momentum and jump over the first yard and do what I needed to do. And yeah, I end up getting away. I'm not sure what happened with that or how they got that information, but you know, somehow that got back to them. But that was the only other incident. After that, I was pretty smart and pretty low key until the day I got caught.
So what happened when you got caught then?
So I was back home, and I was visiting a friend who had some charges that got dismissed. They were charged with this robbery case, and the charges got dismissed. But in the legal world, the DA has a certain amount of time to refile those charges.
Mm-hmm.
So I came within that window to his house, and it turns out those charges were refiled. So police came to pick him up. We were all in a car together. It was 3 of us. We were driving over to a friend's house. We left his place, and you know, they came for him originally. So we pull up to this block of our friend's house, and all of a sudden there's police just flooding. And I thought it was for me. So we all just exit the car, and we start running. First officer, you know, racks his weapon and goes right after my friend, the person that was intended. And as I was running up on the porch of the house that we were going to, my friend's mom was like opening the door just by chance to come out. So I had blazed right past her into the house. The cops ended up flooding in there. And I was upstairs in the bathroom. I had a gun on me then. I had drugs on me. I flushed the drugs. Went back to the same routine, started taking the gun apart, and I was hiding the pieces in the bathroom. And I just went downstairs because there was nothing else I could do. And I just acted like I was a normal resident in the house. Like I took off my jacket. And at first they believed me. Like I was coming down the steps and I was rubbing my eyes like I was just waking up. And they were like, "Oh, sir, just come over here. We're looking for somebody," this and that. And I'm like, "What's going on?" Like, and
How did they catch up on you?
Well, there was an officer who used to do drug truancy in my high school, and he was there, and he just like was staring, and he was like, "Holy shit, that's Josh Holi." And right when he said that, everyone just like started racking their weapons, like, get the fuck on the ground. And I was just, so yeah,
Damn.
I knew it was over right then and there.
So after they took you in, did they? What were all the charges now at this point when you went in to
Yeah,
jail?
at that time, they end up, searching the bathroom. They found the gun. It was a 40 caliber Smith and Wesson. So at the time they charged me, I had an attempted murder, aggravated assault, few counts of reckless endangerment, possessing instruments of a crime, possession of firearm without a license, and they end up charging me as well with the receiving stolen property because that firearm was stolen.
Did you have a charge for being on the run too?
No specific charge for like aiding and abetting or anything like that. It was just the ones I read.
Damn, man. So when you got in there, you had to go to county jail, and were they going to let you out on bond after being on the run or any of that?
They set it at $250,000,
That's insane.
but I didn't. Yeah, I wasn't gonna pay that, or I couldn't pay it at the time.
No, I mean that's a lot of money, man. But yeah, I mean I mean even with you being on the run for 13 months, I'm surprised they even consider it. I mean, not you being a flight risk or something, but maybe they were just like, he probably ain't got the money for it anyway. But
Yeah, I was surprised as well, but I ended up staying. I ended up staying from that first day until the day I came home.
oh yeah, you never got out. So how long were you in the county jail for? Because you had to go to trial and everything, right?
Yeah, well, I ended up taking a plea. So the county, I was there for 14 months. Went through preliminary hearing and a few plea bargains. They offered me 10 to 20 years initially. I ended up actually beating the gun case and the receiving stolen property from the day I got caught due to like an illegal search and seizure because their warrants were for people, so they could only reasonably look in the house where people could be hiding, and they were like moving the towels to moving towels on a little shelf to find pieces of the gun. So I ended up beating those charges on a technicality, and then I ended up receiving a plea for the mandatory minimum. In Pennsylvania, if you commit a crime or a felony with a firearm, the mandatory minimum is 5 to 10 years. And it was my first offense. So my lawyer was able to negotiate that, and that ended up being my sentence.
So remember, he said at the beginning when you called that lawyer, he said it could be 20 to 40 years, and then you got this you got this plea deal, and then you negotiated and got it down. So you eventually got, what did you say, 5 to 10 years it was?
Yeah, because if you go to trial on a charge and you make the city, spend that money and go through that process and you get found guilty, they give you the max.
Yeah.
But if you agree to a plea, then the pleas are much less than the max because it saves the city time and effort and money.
So in the beginning, were you really wanting to take a plea deal?
I was hoping some way that he wouldn't go to the preliminary hearing because at the time, maybe this has changed today, but when I was there, if your victim doesn't show up to the prelim, you can walk on that charge.
Damn.
I've seen people walk. I've beat my gun case at the prelim due to that illegal search, but also I guess one of the main people who owned that firearm, who was supposed to be ready, was unable to show up to that hearing, and that also played a part in that charge getting dropped. So I was really hoping that I could pay him or something. But once he came to the prelim and went through the motion of testifying and pointing me out in the courtroom, at that point I knew, damn, there's no way I could take this to trial. Like, I'm never going to win.
What was your thoughts when he came in and pointed you out?
I mean, because I was still buried in that life, I was really upset. But on the other hand, I knew he was going to, and I knew he was doing what he wanted to do, that whatever he felt was best for him. Maybe he, thought if he let me beat it, like, I would just come after him again. I mean, as much as I don't want to advocate for it, it's like I can't blame him for what he did. He's like, if what incentive does he have to let me out? Like, there's no benefit to him.
No, just you.
Me being free. So I think he
Yeah.
didn't have any trouble just saying, yeah, it was this
That's
guy.
him.
And I'm
That's
not.
him.
Yeah.
Well, well, after you got your sentence, you went to prison, and how much time were you facing? Like, how much did you think you'd get out on if you were on good behavior?
There was a lot of talk about violent crimes and parole and us doing 85% of our time. So for the most part, I was prepared to do, 8.5 years. That's kind of like what I thought would be normal if I had made any type of big mistakes, because I knew doing that many years, there was no way I was just going to coast free without, any type of drama for the most part. I just didn't have faith in that, even though it does happen to people. So I was worried about having to do that long, but at the same time, I was accountable, and I kind of just told myself, like, look, you bought this, you made a decision, you got to live with your decision.
That's true. What I mean, did you end up getting involved with fights and selling stuff while in prison to make money?
Yeah, in prison, I ended up selling. First, we were selling tobacco in the county, which did really well. Like I made like a good like 10 grand in the 14 months I was there. Like
Jeez,
helped me
you
with.
actually made some money and
Yeah,
all been locked
definitely.
up.
And I went to the hole once while I was there because I ended up getting a cell phone in there while I was there, and we were selling some different things, weed. We were getting alcohol in there. Um, and yeah, I end up getting caught not with the phone itself, but with like one of the accessory, like the headphones, when they came to shake my cell down.
Yeah.
So that got me a month in the hole. So I went to the hole for that. But I knew it was so early on in my sentence, I knew that wouldn't affect my parole. So in the county, that was really my only on paper time that I got in trouble. I still got into some scuffles here and there, but nothing major, because I knew most of the people. It was my hometown, and we were in maximum security. We were on a tier on our own, so it was only me and the rest of the guys who did some serious crimes, and a lot of them I already knew.
So, I mean, when you went in there, did you have to get affiliated with any of the guys or, run with a group of people? Usually there's either Bloods or Crips, Mexican Mafia, Aryan Brotherhood, all that. I mean, was that present where you were at?
In the county, there was
Well, I
definitely.
mean, prison too. Either
Oh,
one.
okay. Yeah,
Either
I mean,
one.
upstate flooded with that. I mean, especially when you go upstate or in Pennsylvania, the primary people are like the Philly guys and the Pittsburgh guys, and yeah, the all the gangs are there. Latin Kings, Bloods, Crips, the Aryans are there. But for the most part, again, like I just stuck to myself. I was playing chess and reading books and working out, and I never got caught up in that mix. I mean, strangely, funny enough, me even saying that, the Spanish guys would call me like El Lobo Solitario, which meant like the lone wolf, because I was always that guy that was just doing my own thing. I didn't really have many problems. I did get in one fight my first year up there with a Muslim guy. It was a pretty rough fight, and we got sentenced to 3 months in the hole for that.
Damn.
Um, and it was over. It wasn't even my problem. It was just he had a problem with one of my friends, and he came to me like, "What's up with your boy?" And that turned into an argument, and eventually we started fighting out in the day room over it. So nothing I was directly involved in or creating drama, but yeah, the gangs are definitely there, and it's serious there. People aren't fucking around. I mean, there's definitely people getting stabbed up there and getting seriously hurt. Getting airlifted out of there, getting put on the golf cart out of there from the yard. It's all there.
Was there, for you, were you wanting to change your mind when you were first in their prison, wanting to make your life better, or did it take a little while? Because, I mean, living how you were living for maybe, over like 10 years, you were living the way to where you were thinking, having a negative mindset and wanting to be a criminal. So, I mean, when you first went in there, it might have been hard, but when did that change occur with you?
Like I think after I got locked up, even from the beginning, I just kind of went on this intellectual journey, because at heart, like I had mentioned, when I was young, I was a nerd. So at this point, I knew I had time. I didn't have anything else to do, so I was just locked into, let me start educating myself. I started building more of a relationship with God and learning about other things. And it got to the point where I just started seeing the world that I was living, and I started realizing how was I part of this for so long? Like this is not sustainable. And I'd see a lot of grown men upstate who were good people who just made some mistake and now their life is a wrap. And it started to kind of play on me and come to that realization, like, you know, it's either you're gonna live this life and end up here or end up dead. I mean, what are the other avenues here? And now I'm down one of those roads already. So it kind of came to the point where I was just like, understanding I'm meant for something greater, especially when I went to the hole for that time. There's people down there. There was guys down there that have been down there for so long, like 15 plus years, just permanently down there, ad seg. There's people down there throwing shit, like all sorts of stuff. And I'm down there just looking and I'm like, this is what I'm like making of myself, right? Like this like they're making fun of guys down there because they haven't seen a car in like 20 years.
That's
Like
crazy.
yeah, it's just it's some heavy reality checks. And so that's when I started realizing, like, okay, I'm gonna switch this around. I have the intellect to do it. It's just I was bought into that life, and that's just a part of me. When I get passionate about something or get focused on something, I'm all in. And I thought, if I could make it through everything I just made it through, why can't I handle the real world? That should not be a tall task.
No, I mean that's good that you started experiencing all these things to really come to this realization. So I've interviewed other people and they talk about being in bad conditions and while in prison, and then being around certain guys and certain killers, certain people that are losing their mind, and just seeing all this kind of stuff. And they're like, man, what am I doing in here? This is really what I got with my life now. This is where I'm at. This is terrible. And then that's their click moment. That's when they change their life. And it sounds like that was really what it was for you. There was another event too that I heard from your previous interview too, was when you seen someone getting stabbed, and that you didn't feel nothing about it. Like, that was another moment. You want to touch on that?
Yeah, that was also a game changer. I was out in the yard, and there was this guy that ended up getting jumped. He got jumped by a few people, and they were all just stabbing him. And what I ended up finding out later, that I don't believe I mentioned in a previous interview, is that there was another person who had a big problem with this guy, and I believe this was gang related. And he sent, because he couldn't get to this person directly, he like sent these guys to like befriend this dude. So it's like these people became friends with this guy over a series of months just to rock him to sleep, to culminate in that moment where they're all working out together as a group and everyone just starts stabbing him up. And I remember like being there watching that happen while I was just doing my set of pull-ups, and it's like it's not even happening. Like I'm watching it happen, and in my head I'm thinking, okay, like I'm really surprised this guy hasn't fallen yet. Like I know he's gonna fall at any moment, and he did. And he was bleeding like crazy, and he was one of those guys that I mentioned. They had the golf cart him out of there on a stretcher. And I just remember going back to my cell, like, how is it that I just saw that and like nothing changed? My heart rate didn't change, my expression didn't change, like I wasn't startled. And that's when I started understanding, like, okay, this is what people talk about when, you know, to a level people are like institutionalized and just like desensitized to the violence that they're seeing, because it happens on the daily. We see it in the chow hall, we see it on the walk, we see it in the ed building, we see it at church. And it's like, that was another big piece to me. Like, even though I'm trying to do something else, look what's happening to me internally. Like I need to get a hold of that and just be aware of what that is, because that's the reason why people end up doing stuff to other people, and it's not a big deal to them because they're around it too much, and that just becomes the norm.
Yeah, that's what you see every day, and it just becomes normal. And In your case, how far along were you in your prison sentence when you came to that realization that you're like, man, I got to get out of this?
I think it was just over halfway through. Like I was somewhere around the 3 year mark
Hmm.
where I really started making that turn. And just like you had said about the people who were there for life, a lot of them, you know, were such a blessing to me because they were able to give me a lot of sound advice. Uh, Several of them that I had befriended there, people that I played chess with on the regular, like people that I would run some miles with on the track. They were those kind of guys that were like, listen, like I want you to know my story so you can know that when you walk out of here, this is a place you never want to come back to. And I definitely got some good guidance from them. So yeah, just over halfway through is when everything started really turning.
When it came for your release, what was your mindset getting out? What did you plan on wanting to do when you got out?
I didn't have too much of a plan in terms of like concrete goals outside of I had a supportive family. My family was there. They were coming to visit me. I knew I had a place to stay. I knew I had a job because my stepfather owned his own business, contracting, and doing construction. And he had already had a job lined up for me. So my biggest concern was the basics. Like I've equipped myself mentally now. I'm educated. I felt strong. I was disciplined. I was in great shape. But I was really worried about parole because I had knew any type of mistake I make, and I saw it happen too often. We'd watch people leave and 30 days later they're back. I used to just see them in the yard again. And it's because they got pulled over and, the conversation didn't go well with the cop or they made some small mistake. So I was really focused on let's get home. Let's just be a normal, average Joe. Like I'm gonna go to work. I'm gonna come home. I'm gonna spend time with my family, and like just make sure things are in order. That was kind of like my phase one.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's a good one because you didn't want to make the mistake to come back because you already been there for over 5 years, right?
Yeah, 5 years on the dot is 5 years on the day is what I did.
Damn. Well, when you got out, what was your relationship with your sister? And then, of course, she had her son with the her ex boyfriend you shot and stuff. So, how did you re put yourself in her life and your nephew's life and all that? I mean, how did that work
Yeah,
out for you?
yeah. Thank God it did. It worked out well. I mean, there was a time during my stay in the county and then for some time upstate that I had, her and I just weren't talking. For we kind of grew apart from the situation because of what happened. I know it was a big, a traumatizing event for her. But then over the last couple of years, like I really started connecting back with her. We forgave each other for everything, and same with my family. I came to that realization how important and how much they love me, how special they are. So it was kind of just like all love when I came home. Everyone was just happy I was there. My stepfather, who had been with my mom for the past like 20 years, they wanted to get married and they were waiting for me to come home. So it was like the first year I was home, we had, they got married. So it was the whole family was back together. My nephew was, let's see, he was 8 or 7 at the time, somewhere around there. So he was just a kid and he didn't understand that I was in jail. He thought I was in school.
School.
Yeah.
That
Thought
was
I was
the
away at some college.
yeah.
So
No, I get it.
yeah, so we were all bugging out, living in the same house, and yeah, it was
Wow.
all good for the most part. It was quite wholesome.
What about the man you shot? Because I know you said I've heard you say that you ran into him after you got out of prison. What was that like?
Yeah, it was a, a really it was a really good situation, honestly. I mean, I actually went into a Wawa, which is like a convenience store that we have, um, and we ran into each other in there. And I was on parole at the time, and he had already moved on with his life now. He is married, and he's with a new woman, and they were in there. And he actually came over to me, and he had said, listen, I heard there was a chance that we can talk, and kind of like autopilot, like I just spit out like no, it just like came out. I didn't even mean for it to. But I had over the years that I was in upstate, like I had prayed for this guy. Like I really tried to let go of the drama that he and I had. And you know, I kind of felt like God was telling me in that moment, like, listen, man, and like I'm giving you a chance to do the right thing here. You preached all this about how much you want to change. Like this is your chance to prove that. So I just went back to him because he started to walk away after I had said no about discussing anything. And then I had just thought, okay, you're on parole, you're on camera. Like, how can I be in the right position here if something goes south? So I just told him, look, I'm open to talking to you. If you want to sit down and talk, like, let's go to my car. We could sit in the car and, your wife can wait here. So he agreed. So it was a crazy moment. We both walked out. It was my first time seeing him since I got sentenced. And it was like, we both walked outside. I got in the driver's side, he got in the passenger, and we just sat down and I was like, so what's going on? And we just had a grown man conversation, apologized to each other. We agreed that, we don't got to be friends, but for the sake of my nephew and, who's his son, like, we don't want him to grow up thinking, his uncle and his dad like hate each other. So we just said, if we see each other after this, it doesn't have to be anything. So, and we just shook on that and that was it. And I kind of felt like, okay, that was a big test for me. And that gave me some confidence. Like, you know what, like I am changing and I am going to do the right thing going forward.
Well, that is not a lot of people can say they've done that with their person they shot, or that anyone in like that kind of situation. To me, I've never heard that, man. That's so you're right. It was like a test from God, and that was able you were able to just be like, okay, let's just have this conversation. It takes a lot from coming from your side and his side to be able to just say, okay, no more problems, no nothing. That's it. I mean, that's a
Yeah,
big deal, man.
it was hard. It was hard as hell to do it. Even afterward, I was like, damn, like I can't even believe that happened. But and even to this day, like we're not cool. But I did the best I could do in that situation. I don't know what else, more I could do to, you know, but I was definitely thankful that for that moment, and that definitely contributed to my confidence and to my understanding that, yeah, I can turn this whole thing around.
Yeah, and you did, because you didn't. So even after all this stuff, you got out of prison, you put yourself through college, right? And you got a good job that you worked your way up to a position, right? A good position you enjoy.
Yeah, I started at this cold storage company, just driving a forklift, picking orders in a freezer. But I was interested in the way their system worked, that ran all their inventory and everything. And I started working my way through that company, started going to college like full time when I was working third shift, end up getting my degree, my associates, my bachelor's. And then I came up with an idea to help that company out, and it got me in the door to their like corporate, to their headquarters. So yeah, this is my 10th year with them now, and now I'm the product manager of that same software that runs their system, that runs their warehouses. I help design that software now, so it's kind of like I went from a user to a designer of that system, which is such a blessing to be able to take that journey.
Yeah, no, that's a big deal, man. To be in the position you were when you're 16, 22 years old, then going to prison and coming out and being able to even get these opportunities, man. Because not everybody, I'm sure you've had your fair share of coming out and having background checks and just being able to, so, some doors shut on you, but you were able to push some of these doors open, man. You had to work your way up there and prove to these people that you have changed your life around, and that you're not the same person you were way back when.
Yeah, I always felt like that felony, I knew it's a stamp on me for life. So I always felt that drive, like I have to work twice as hard than anyone else, because it's like even when I do succeed, then people find out about it, there's plenty of times where I've just been knocked down or cut off about it, and things don't work out. And I do try to look at it in that way, like, okay, if it doesn't work out, it just wasn't meant. I got to keep working, because it's such a hindrance for people who are coming home to try and do something. And I think they give into it as a crutch, like, way too early. Once they start hitting walls, they're like, damn, like, this is never going to work. And they kind of feel like they've put in enough effort, but it takes more than that. It takes more than an average effort for a long time to, like you said, to burst those doors, or to break through those doors.
Yeah, and a couple more questions I had for you was, what impact do you want to leave with people, like by sharing your story? Like, what impact would you like by just sharing your stories? What is the purpose of it?
I think my primary impact that I'm trying to share with people is that there's gonna be times where you feel like you're done. Like, you're gonna feel like you have an understanding, that you're mature enough to say, look, this isn't gonna work. Like, I'm not gonna be able to win. I'm not gonna be, like, because I was so sure of that so many times. And I think that's kind of like my primary message, is like, your story is not done yet. Like, there's still a lot more left to write. You're the author, and don't let other people write those pages for you. And through hard work and self-belief, you're going to push through all of that, and you could really become something that is not even in the scope of what you're thinking about right now.
That's true, man. What knowledge would you give your younger self with all this stuff that you went through now? I mean, say you went back to that day you got that $700 ticket and you started selling weed. What would you tell your younger self at that point?
Yeah, damn, that's a great question. Because if it would have been a day after selling that weed, I know he would have never listened.
No.
But if it would have been a day before, yeah, I would have definitely told him, look, this isn't even a big deal. Like, I don't know why you're stressing it. It's a fine. You can pay $10 a month on this thing. You never worked. You don't know the meaning of hard work yet.
No.
So this is the perfect time to learn. Like, get you a job, do the right thing, and go through the grind. Because although those times, making a little bit of money and, doing a lot of that hard, labor, it's not about like what you're getting paid, but it's more like what you're gaining in consistently getting up in it every day and working hard. You're gaining a quality there that's going to build something in you, later on. And I think people try to really skip past that. They don't want to go through the process. They just want to hit the goal and, get to the light at the end of the tunnel. But yeah, it takes work to get there. So I would have talked to him about that.
Yeah, well, that's a good way to answer that one, man. Because who knows? I mean, a lot could have been different. But that's what this follows up into my next question. My last one is, did you have to go through all this really to make this change in your life? I mean, do you think? I mean, what could it have been any other way for you?
I think, me personally, I think it was necessary. Yeah. And I think I'm finding a lot of purpose in what I'm doing now, especially now that I'm trying to share my story with the world and speak to people, get my message out there. Again, just you having me on here is a big deal to me. And, I really appreciate it. So I don't think I would be able to have the impact that I plan on having to people if I wouldn't have went through this. So this is all just a preparatory phase, in my opinion. It was a necessary thing to happen in order for me to have the ammo to reach people, and to have the credibility and the experience that I wouldn't have otherwise had.
Well, that's what I always tell the people that I interview, man. It's like, me, I didn't have a, major criminal background or anything like that. So for me, trying to preach to someone, it's a lot different from versus you, because you're actually someone that has lived through that, went through prison, changed your life around, got a good job, went to college, man, have a good relationship with your family and stuff. It's all possible. And even you can help prevent kids or at-risk criminals before they even get into crime, or if they're currently going through it, you can let them know, hey man, I've been there, been through that, so I'll tell you what it's going to lead to. And otherwise, man, I mean, it's hard to reach to really make an impact on certain people that are already currently involved with crime. Like you said, it would have been hard to try to tell yourself any different after the day you sold that weed or you first got that weed, because once you get that fast money or whatever it may be, it's like it's just hard to try and preach to someone.
For sure. And just even if you have the experience, it's hard to deliver that message the right way to connect with them, especially if they're at a younger age. So we appreciate, we definitely appreciate people like you that are bridging that gap, that are getting our message out there. So thank you for that, man.
Yeah, well, thank you, Joshua, for staying on the show, coming with me for about an hour and 5 minutes. We're at now, man. You got a really good redemption story. These are the stories I love to hear, man. Do you have your platform or anything you want to promote? Of course, I'll put them in the video description. But I mean, if you got any, you got your Instagram. I don't know if you got a website or anything else coming, but what do you got?
Yeah, Instagram primarily. No_Vember, KNOW_VEMBER. That's where all my content is now. I'm working on a website, so it should be live soon, joshuaholi.com. But otherwise, yeah, you can find me on Facebook, Joshua Holi, and TikTok, November as well.
Yeah, well, that's cool, man. Joshua went from being a drug dealer and shooting his sister's boyfriend to changing his life around completely. Not many people can say they resolved their issues with the person they shot. But again, this just goes to show anything is possible. Please comment any key takeaways that you got from this interview. Please share it with anyone that you think will enjoy this type of content. Also, please be sure to subscribe if you want to get more interviews like this. At the end of this video, a playlist will pop up of all my other interviews I've done in the past. Thank you again so much for watching, and of course, we'll see you on the next one.